Hello, my name is Thomas Kukel from Kukel Consulting, and I would like to welcome you to our website where you can find a lot of different relevant articles about COAs. And today I'm going to read our article number 1. What is a clinical outcome assessment? A practical introduction to PRO, ClinRO, ObsRO and PerfO. Introduction. Clinical trials are designed to answer a simple but demanding question: does this treatment make a meaningful difference for patients? Traditional endpoints such as lab values, imaging results, or survival statistics are essential, but they do not fully capture how a patient feels and functions in everyday life. This is where COAs, clinical outcome assessments, come in. They provide structured, validated ways to measure symptoms, physical functioning, quality of life, and overall health status from various perspectives. Such information is essential not only for patients but also for regulators and clinicians who rely on accurate, patient-centered data to guide decisions. This article outlines where COAs are important, explain the four main COA types: PRO, ClinRO, ObsRO, and PerfO, and offers practical guidance on how to select and implement them in clinical research. Why clinical outcome assessments matter. A COA is any measure that describes or reflects how a patient feels, functions, or survives. In other words, COAs are the tools that translate the lived impact of disease and treatment into structured data. They can capture pain, fatigue, emotional well-being, physical functioning, activities of daily living, and many other aspects that patients and clinicians care about. In recent years, there has been a strong shift toward patient-focused drug development. Regulators and payers increasingly expect sponsors to demonstrate not only that a treatment changes biological markers, but also that it improves outcomes that are meaningful for the patient perspective. Well-selected COAs provide evidence that is interpretable, reproducible, and suitable for regulatory decision-making and labeling. Without appropriate COAs, teams risk running trials that show a biological signal but fail to demonstrate tangible benefit to patients. This can weaken the value story of new therapy and limit the real-world practice. Conversely, a robust COA strategy strengthens the entire evidence package and helps connect clinical results with the outcomes that matter the most to patients and healthcare systems. The four types of COAs: PRO, ClinRO, ObsRO, and PerfO. COAs are usually grouped into four main types, each with a specific role and appropriate use context. A PRO, a patient-reported outcome, is a direct report from the patient about their health status, without interpretation by a clinician, caregiver, or anyone else. PRO instruments are typically questionnaires that assess symptoms, physical functioning, or health-related quality of life. They are essential when the concept of interest is inherently subjective, such as pain intensity, breathlessness, fatigue, or emotional well-being. Because only the patient can truly report how they feel, PROs are central to capturing the patient's voice. Clinician-reported outcome, the ClinRO, is an assessment made by a trained healthcare professional based on a clinical observation, examination, or interpretation of patient reports and test results. ClinROs are appropriate when expert judgment is needed, for example, rating disease severity, grading adverse events, or interpreting imaging. They add value when they are observable clinical signs that the patient cannot reliably assess themselves. However, they do require careful training and standardized processes to minimize variability between the raters and sites. Then we have the observer-reported outcome, the ObsRO. This is reported by someone who regularly observes the patients in daily life, most often a parent or caregiver. ObsRO are particularly important in populations that cannot reliably self-report. This could be young children or individuals with significant cognitive impairment. These measures focus on observable behaviors and events, such as sleep patterns, crying episodes, or assistance needed in daily tasks. To be effective, ObsRO must be carefully designed so observers report what they actually see rather than interfering internal states. Performance outcomes (PerfO) is based on a standardized task that the patient performs under observation, such as timed walk test, cognitive task, or a manual dexterity test. Results are typically objective scores like distance walked, time taken, or number of correct responses. PerfOs are useful when performance on a controlled task is a good proxy for real-world functioning, and when objective, quantitative data are valuable. Their design must balance scientific rigor with feasibility and patient burden. So how to choose the right COA type? Choosing the right COA type begins with a clear definition of the concept of interest and the treatment benefit that the trial aims to demonstrate. Instead of starting from an existing instrument, teams should ask which aspect of feeling and functioning are most relevant for the disease and intervention, and who is the best positioned to report them. If the outcome is subjective and internal, like pain relief, a PRO is typically essential. If medical expertise is needed to interpret science or test, a ClinRO might be more suitable. For populations unable to self-report, an ObsRO is often required. When a standardized task can meaningfully represent a key aspects of functioning, a PerfO may be the best choice. In many trials, using a combination of COA types provides the most complete picture. For instance, a study in a chronic symptomatic condition may combine a PRO for symptoms, a PerfO test for functional capacity, and a ClinRO scale for overall clinical status. Alignment with regulatory expectations, scientific objectives, and patient needs is crucial to cross-functional discussion. Early in development is highly recommended. So here are some practical considerations for study teams. Once COA types and instruments are selected, operational planning becomes critical. Study teams should ensure appropriate licensing and permission and confirm that the instruments are suitable for the indication, population, and context of use. For global studies, high-quality translation and cultural adaptation are necessary to preserve the meaning of items across language and regions. Decisions about mode of administration, such as paper versus electronic COAs, have practical consequences for data quality, patient burden, and site workflow. Electronic solution can reduce missing data and transcription error and allow better control of timing, but they do require usability-driven design and clear training for sites and patients. Finally, study teams should invest in training and ongoing data quality monitoring. Investigators, raters, caregivers, and patient needs need clear instructions on when to complete COAs, monitoring completion rates, missing data patterns, and unusual response profiles enable early detection and resolution of issues that could otherwise compromise the value of the data. So what are the conclusion and key takeaways from this article? The clinical outcome assessments are essential for translating the impact of treatments into outcomes that reflect how patients actually live with their condition. Understanding the 4 COA types, PRO, ClinRO, ObsRO, and PerfO, helps study teams to select tools that align with their scientific objectives and patient population. When COAs are chosen based on a clear concept of interest and implemented with attention to licensing, translation, mode of administration, training, and monitoring, they significantly strengthen the overall evidence package. Treating COAs as a strategic component of trial design rather than a late operational detail increases the chances of generating data that are meaningful to regulators, clinicians, payers, and most importantly, the patients. And that was the end of the article. Thank you very much for your attention.